So lobbying and greater political activism by women in the region is paying dividends. I want to ask you, Mahnaz Afkhami, because Iran during the election of June 2009 was a showpiece of what women wanted and what they were trying to do. During the election, they were demanding gender equality and women's rights be at the top of the agenda.
Well, actually, this is the situation in Iran, which has a very sophisticated civil society with a very primitive set of laws. And the women have been extremely successful in their efforts, even though they haven't particularly been able to change specific laws. They were actually very good at participating in spaces that were allowed during the election and in being able to put their wishes on the platform of at least two of the candidates who had not necessarily had feminist views, but they were sold.
They recognized the power of the women's vote, just like anywhere else. The power of participation was heard loud and clear. Lina, we want to play a piece of video. It's a report about your own organization in Lebanon. Let's just play a piece and we'll ask you about it.
In this small office in Beirut, rights activist Lina Abou Habib is waging a war for equality. She heads an NGO that's fighting to change the nationality law, a law that allows only men to pass their Lebanese citizenship to their children and spouses, even though the country's constitution says all Lebanese are equal under the law.
The current nationality law is one of the most straightforward case in point in discrimination in all our laws.
A case in point in discrimination in all your laws. How to change that, and is it possible? Are you doing that?
Yes, indeed. We've been doing this as part of our international partnership since 2002-2003. And the first realization was that women in the Arab regions are not considered to be equal citizens, because you've got straightforward laws which says men can pass on nationality, women cannot. That is an indication that our states do not consider women to be citizens. It is possible to do so, yes, since the massive mobilization that we've had and working with the media and talking with politicians and decision makers. We've seen 3 Arab countries change their laws. Egypt has changed its law in 2004, followed by Algeria in 2005, Morocco more recently in 2008.
So that women can pass on their nationalities?
Indeed, in these 3 countries. This tells us, if you allow me, that there's a slogan that all of us use in the women's movements in the region, that change is necessary and possible. So this whole idea that this is static, this is culture, this is religion, actually has no basis.
Well, let me point that out. You say it has no basis, but Dr. Isra in Jordan actually said these people believe they're heroes. That means the culture, the education, the religious sensibility in some cases has told them that this is right. How do you change the culture of impunity that leads to gender inequality?
First of all, strengthening the law. Guarantee women's human rights, women's rights according to the Constitution, and then adopting and raising awareness about progressive kind of interpretation of the religion, because there are different types of interpretation. And Jordan adopted through Amman message, for example, the interpretation of Islam that is pro-women rights, dignity of everybody, and equality.
But there still is a problem. The UNDP for several years now has put out significant reports about women's rights and their empowerment and the reality. Arab women's economic participation remains the lowest in the world.
Yes.
No more than 33% of women are in the economy, in contrast to 55.6%, which is the average around the world. And that disempowers the whole region, according to the UN. What can be done, and is anything being done to increase that?
Indeed, I think in the case of the region, there is more awareness that one of the major problems is that women are not in the economy. They're not movers and shakers of the economy. So one of the things that is being done is actually looking at why and understanding that women work all the time for free, at least in this region. In the case of countries where you have conflict or post-conflict, one of the reasons why communities are sustained, one of the reasons why there's livelihoods in these communities is because women work for free almost all the time. And I think this is coming up quite strongly nowadays.
So now they're demanding to be paid for their work?
Not paid for their work, acknowledged for their work, and protected for this work. And also acknowledged for the fact that because they do all this work for free, the burden is far more on women in case of economic crisis than on men. And I think we are witnessing, one thing positive that we're witnessing in this region is the fact that women's economic contribution is way higher than what we thought it would be, and that women need to have access to social security, to insurance, etc., even if they're not employed in the conventional sense of the word.
And let me turn to you, Ms. Afkhami, because one of the other issues, especially from the Beijing conference, was that there should be a certain number of women in parliament, in political positions. Yeah. The global average of women holding seats right now, 18.6%, is way far from the target of 30% that was set in Beijing in the declaration.
That's true. It is one of our main goals even now, because we have come to believe that every other thing, whether it's violence against women, whether it's peace and conflict resolution, it has to do with politics, it has to do with power, with women being where they should be. And that's why our partnership, we're all part of a partnership, have to do really work very hard.
Does it depress you a little bit that at this rate it'll take 40 more years to reach gender parity?
We don't believe that.
You don't believe it? No.
Because the way we're working, I don't think it's going to take any. I bet we're thinking 2020.
2020.
By the end of this decade, you know, we're thinking that we're going to be reaching some sort of, if not parity, at least an increase, a great increase.
As an example, in Jordan, in the elections for municipality councils, for example, 2007, we have a quota system that occupied 20% for seats for women. But then when women ran to these elections, 27% of the seats were occupied by women. So we are about to, yes, of course, we are about to reach the average, but of course, we think that 50-50 is the goal.
We've been talking about the whole issue of democracy, culture, and tradition. Yes. Many Muslims are in Europe, and there seems to be a lot of tension right now, particularly over dress, sort of religious nationalism. And the most recent has been the idea of wearing full-faced burqas, full-faced veils in public. Does this cultural clash resonate in the Middle East, or is it just purely European?
The immigrant populations are usually the most conservative. Exactly. They have a reaction, they sort of get
rising. They feel on the outside, too.
Feel on the outside culturally, and so they react much more extremely than back home.
And if I can add an example, for instance, in 2004, 2003, there was a radical reform of the family laws in Morocco, which was as a result of decades of activism. Now, it's amazing if you look at the communities of Moroccans in Europe. There's a huge difference between. It's as if this reform hasn't reached the communities abroad, and that is quite important. So that's why, in response to your question, it's really related to communities of immigrants abroad, to their own situation, to the situation of integration versus exclusion, which we may not resonate that strongly in our countries.
On that note, we're just going to take a break, and we will be back. And to watch a discussion we had on this program about France as it moves closer to a partial ban on the burqa, log on to amanpour.com. You can watch a heated discussion between a former Dutch lawmaker, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, an Islamic scholar, Tariq Ramadan, and a Syrian-born Danish lawmaker, Asma Khader. In a moment, there's a world of possibilities for women in one place where the doors of opportunity are wide open.